I would like to thank Sergei Velichansky for coming to our channel today to tell his opinions on what's happening in Ukraine. Welcome, Sergey.
Hey, thanks for the invitation. I'm glad to share my thoughts.
Okay. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Okay. Uh, Pretty much all of my life I was into entertainment industry. I was an improviser. I created an improv comedy club in Kyiv. I used a lot of applied improvisation for education, for training soft skills, business, corporate clients, all those good things, training English through improvisation, teaching at the university, just TV hosting, hosting big sports and social events like football championship, Euro 2012, and many others. So that was before the full-scale invasion.
Okay. Can you tell me what you know about the Budapest Memorandum or Agreement, as some people know it?
Well, that's a very interesting
Topic, I guess.
topic, yeah. Uh,
I mean, just
because
briefly. I mean, what
sure,
like some of
sure.
the
I think
outline details.
there are a lot of misleading information, so I'll try to make it precise and short. Um, in the year of 1991, Ukraine proclaimed its independence. In fact, Moscow proclaimed its independence from the Soviet Union earlier, a few months before. So when the Soviet Union collapsed, which Americans used to call Russia, but that was not Russia, it was the Soviet Union with 15 different republics, Ukraine being one of the republic. So when the Soviet Union collapsed uh, in the early 1990s, Ukraine held uh, the biggest outside of USA and Moscow and Russia, the third biggest number of nuclear weapons, which was inherited from the Soviet Union. So it was so the first. I want to debunk one misleading message, propaganda message right now that it was Russia's, so Ukraine needed to return. No, it was the Soviet Union's. And so Moscow and Kyiv inherited what we had owned. Everyone kept what they had from the Soviet Union. And so Ukraine had a third largest arsenal in the world back in 1990, what, 4, 6?
Yes.
Okay. Now, of course, the United States and Moscow and Washington, White House and Kremlin, uh, they they decided, well, that's not a good thing, so let's make an offer to the Ukrainians. So they came together with the Great Britain. They came together and offered, uh, first of all, the need to uh, disarm ourselves, so we would become non-nuclear nation. But in return, they all said, if you do this, don't worry, we have your back. The United States, Moscow, the United Kingdom, they all said, we'll have you back. Don't worry. I mean, nobody's going to attack you. Nobody's going to, uh, you know, uh, 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 wage war on you. Moscow, many times, and at that time as well, said, we respect your borders, we respect your territory, everything what's now marked on the map, that's all Ukrainian, including Crimea, though, by the way, everything, including the eastern parts Donetsk and Luhansk. So everything is Ukrainian. So don't worry. I mean, we are friends, we're brothers, so we're not going to attack you. The Americans said, give up your nukes to Moscow, or some should go under the cutting or the dismantling, but others went to Moscow, to Russia. Now, many of those rockets and some of those planes now are waging attacks on our peaceful cities. So that was the only way why Ukraine gave up the nukes. The only option, the only understanding was the guarantees from the United
The
States.
signed document as well, right?
Yes, the memorandum. Though
So
some start saying, "Oh, there is no jurisdictional, uh, you know,
it wasn't just like a handshake deal. It was actually signed documents and everything.
but it was the word given by the democracies or by the nations, by the leaders of those nations, Moscow, Washington, the White House, and London said, "Hey, don't worry, that's it." So that was the promise. Now the question is, since when the promise and the handshake are no longer valid? Well, we're not surprised with the Russian side, with Moscow, because they had like many attempts to subdue Ukraine. Like the recent ones were when they had their own Red Revolution back in 1917 and 1918. They already waged a huge war uh, at Ukraine, and they uh, basically conquered the country and started their first big terror against the Ukrainians. Like hundreds and hundreds of
Now,
thousands of
now
people
before
were killed.
1918, but before 1918, there was never Moscow and Ukraine was never the same. They were never the same. Even during Soviet Union, they were never the same. Is this correct?
Exactly. I mean, different language, different culture, different vision, different, even like freedom aspirations, completely different. So the music, the just everything. Now, of course, since 1918, when the beginning of 20th century, of course, Ukraine was subdued with a lot of blood. Then the 1930s, the first starvations, man-made starvations in the Ukrainian territory
And this was
with
under
millions.
Stalin's rule, correct?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, with
I think
millions.
a lot of people don't know about that one. I had the chance to visit the museum in Kyiv about I guess in Ukraine you call it the Holodomor. I can't.
Holodomor.
Yeah,
Yes, the
I,
the starvation.
the famine, and I had no clue until I went to this museum that Stalin killed more Ukrainians than Hitler did Jews.
Yeah, that's
So
about
and
right.
and people don't know this. I think the only person who's killed more has been the Mongolian leader. I'm
Genghis Khan.
huh?
Genghis Khan.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and he's the only one that's killed more. I mean, so they're in the top three, you know.
And even the inhabitants of the Russian Federation, nobody counts how many of them were starved to death as well. So the Moscow politics at that time, it was to subdue all the minor nations, and so they treated the Ukrainian nation uh, alike. However, they needed the Ukrainian nation first of all as a bread basket, one. Secondly, as the intellectuals, because a lot of technology, a lot of culture was born in Ukraine. And so those that were willing to collaborate with Moscow, then they have become so-called Russian scientists, Russian musicians, and all those things. You see, the thing is, the way they dealt with Ukraine all these years, all these like hundreds of years, they would try to assimilate. They would, I mean, over 300 times, Moscow wanted to kill the Ukrainian language. They were very successful in creating a huge myth that the language was about, or like urban, or no, not urban, suburban, like the village, the kind
Like
of like,
slang, I guess.
ah,
Like slang, I guess. It's like a slang language. It's what they were trying to say.
slang. That's one thing, but secondly, like a village, the uneducated people only speak
Oh yeah, 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 yeah.
Ukrainian. You
Yeah,
know,
we have the same in America. It's like being here in Alabama, the people in the larger cities like Chicago, New York, it's like they're little-minded people. It's all country, and I think I would
yeah, but you do have a great like industry of country music and country culture,
well, I'm
which
not a
is
big country music fan, but yeah.
I love it. I love your country. You know, Brett
Yeah.
Paisley and just a lot of different country music, real good ones. I like them. You know,
Thinking
but
about how Stalin started his dealings with, I think some of these plans, like some of the things that are happening today, were and somehow or another made to be what is the word I'm looking for? They when Stalin started uprooting and moving whole towns and whole villages from Ukraine and moving them to Russia or to Siberia, and then transplanting the Russian towns and villages into Ukraine. I think this is how a lot of this. I mean, I'm not saying that this was the main plan was to do this, but I think it was done this way not only to change the mindset of people in certain areas, but
well,
obviously I mean, when you're looking at how close in proximity, because my first place I visited in Ukraine was Bryanka, which is near Lugansk, or Donetsk region, and most of those people they all spoke Russian, and I guess it's more than likely that when Stalin started his moving towns and villages and and all that this is where he started because it was on the border. It would be easy to overtake that if the people had roots with Russia.
well, you know, one of the styles how they did this, they would at night they would arrest all the inhabitants of those houses and compartment buildings and all those areas. They would just take them away to Siberia, and they would bring the people from the Russian Federation into those apartments, into those places, and they would give them some kind of a job, and they would start living there, and then they would get, and then to legitimize this, they would give them the Ukrainian passports, and then after a generation or two after, now they're Ukrainians, but they don't know their own language, they don't know their own culture, they don't know anything from even about their the territory where they live. So that was a very specific plan of action. Like another thing, Crimea. Most of the people that used to live in the Crimea were the Tatars. That's an
Okay.
indigenous nation that lived in the Crimea. Well, in the 1940, somewhere there, they would like hundreds of thousands of the Crimeans, of the Tatar, Crimean Tatars, they would take to the Siberia, and they would bring the people from the Russian Federation into their homes, and so little by little, the whole the population has more assimilated into the Moscow format. What they wanted, the Soviet people. This is the specific term that they use, the Soviet people. So it's a assimilated person that doesn't likely doesn't know their own language, doesn't know their own culture. They may have a little bit of like a specific, like a celebration format of their culture, like the costumes, to show that no, we're a democratic country. But in reality, at homes, they could not speak their own languages, and in schools, their children did not study their languages. Like I grew up in the Soviet Union. In school, I studied Russian. I spoke Russian all the time. Most of the culture and music and poetry and all those things I studied were from Russia, from Moscow. And the treatment of the Ukrainian culture was like, okay, well, that's kind of like a younger kind of brother format. Um,
So
I
they wouldn't
mean,
even allow you to acknowledge that you were Ukrainian and not Russian. They,
well, in the 80s, it was a bit allowed, but early in the 70s and 60s and 50s, that was completely a big problem. So that was always, for hundreds of years, always the treatment of Moscow towards the Ukrainians. Because at first, the empire, the Russian Empire, the Moscow Empire, cannot really exist if Ukraine is free. That's for sure. With all the resources, with all the with all the intellect that we have, they cannot, because then the other minor nations will wake up and say, "Hey, what's wrong? How come we are we can't?" So the idea of nationalism was a big issue because it was like almost equals to like crime and sin. You cannot being a nationalist is like being a terrorist,
yeah.
though it was not the case. People just wanted to develop their own culture. They wanted their children, our children, to know our culture, know the mindset of Ukrainians.
I
And
imagine it was quite difficult for the people when, in Ukraine, you had your own country for all these hundreds and hundreds of years before 1917, 1918. And then with Moscow taking over little bit by little bit, and then forming the Soviet Union with Moscow being under control, uh, this is where I think the major misconception that Ukraine has always been Russia. No, Ukraine was never Russia. They were part of Soviet Union. Because I remember in my world history, because I went to high school in the 80s, and I remember when we talked about this region, it was, you know, Soviet Union, along with all the other countries that were involved. And I have a map I had just bought that I wanted to start, for this channel to have in the background so people could actually see. I could show people, you know, they're all these countries were their own individual. It's just the gradual overtaking that Moscow was doing. Um, let's move on. I wanted to ask you, do you remember where you was at and what you was doing when you found out that the full scale invasion had started?
yeah. Well, prior to that, for a month and a half, I had already attended the trainings for the territorial defense
Okay.
because I knew that it's going to happen. It was not the question for me whether or
You
not.
know,
The question was when. Um,
I didn't think it, I really didn't think it would, even with a buildup on the border of, I mean,
yeah.
I just didn't, I don't want to say I was naive, but I
But
didn't. think they
It
would
was
do
hard
it.
to believe. Yes, 21st century. What kind of a big war?
Yeah.
You see, the scale of this war, the people really don't understand. No one has ever fought the scale of this war since World War II. No one. Like the format, the intensity, the amount of ammunition, the amount of rockets, the amount of like big weaponry used every hour. Nobody understood. Nobody,
So
because
you were in training then, I guess, when this started.
yes, and then February 24 when it started, I woke up. I just waited for the uh, uh, meeting place to meet for our 130th Battalion of the Territorial Defense. So on 21st, on 24th, I got my first Kalashnikov, and we went to Zhuliany Airport because we were expecting that it would be the next after the Hostomel Airport when they landed the airborne uh,
Yeah.
troops there. So we started organizing the fortifications of the airport, waiting for it. But then when we understood that it's not happening, our first company of the battalion went to Irpin. So that's where the actual war for us really started.
Okay. What was your first thoughts when this actually occurred? I mean, for me, like I said, I couldn't believe it. I was woke up by a friend of mine from Florida calling me. Um, you know, and of course, I never keep the ringer on my phone. It vibrates, and I, you know, my friend woke me up. He goes, "Yo, Russia's attacking Ukraine." I said, "Oh, they've been talking about that for 3 months or more."
Mhm.
I said, he goes, "It's on the news." So I don't believe it, And a few minutes in the conversation, I started hearing the first rockets and missiles hitting. I guess they were hitting, in the Irpin region, and you could hear these, hitting. Um, and I was like, I guess, it's really happening. I really did not expect it. And
Yeah.
to me, it was, I tell people about my first uh, experience in this was that a friend of mine from Florida had woke me up by calling that the initial rockets and, hitting didn't wake me up. It was a phone vibration that woke me up. And I still to this day don't understand that, but it
Yeah.
was quite interesting. Uh, so you had already decided to join the fight before the actual invasion started, correct?
Yes, exactly.
So, that was I guess like I said, you started you said a month and a half before, correct?
In January, yeah.
Okay, all right. Um, can you tell me a little bit about your first days of the war? Is like some of the things that you were doing, um, and such.
Uh, well, as I said, first couple of weeks we were at the
Yeah.
airport expecting
Yeah.
the so we that was a good thing for us that we did not engage in the active combat because we were able to pretty much emotionally and psychologically and physically team up with all the company members because we were brand new to each other. Most of them were brand new, though a good number of them had trained before. So we were lucky that our sergeants and lieutenants were uh, at least had some training and they knew what they were doing.
Okay.
But then when we went to Irpin to help the local territorial defense, actually, as we're recording right now, there is a third anniversary of liberating Irpin and Bucha.
Well, that's
So
today.
Yeah.
Wow.
So and we went there. 39, 39 territorial defenders from Irpin died defending the town, because the town, as you probably know, it's the just the next stop, last stop before entering Kyiv.
Yeah.
So that was the forepost for the you kind of like the outpost of
Yeah,
Kyiv.
and I think people really, because if they had have made it into Kiev, um that I think in the first in the first weeks, or even if they had made it, in the first month into Kiev, I think this would have changed the complete outcome of everything. Uh,
Sure.
it's I mean it would I mean and yeah, I mean I if people that will be watching this, at least from my region, I mean Birmingham City or Birmingham, Alabama, it would be like almost, well, there's two towns that are north of Birmingham. One's Fultondale and one's Gardendale. It's really from Irpin to Kiev is almost, it's just a little bit further away than say Fultondale is to Gardendale. I mean,
Well,
it's very close.
seven to
People
ten
have no clue.
miles. 7 to 10 miles.
Yeah. So it's I mean, it to me it's amazing because it seems like they put their concentration on this area. And if they had not have done that, to me, I thought all along for 3 months, like, I don't see anybody really taking this serious. I mean, but it seems like they were, but just kind of behind the scenes. Um, and they were, I guess, already somewhat preparing, but it was like you go out, I mean, from what is it, Academic Stagecoach Metro Station down to, if you go from there down to, what is it? On the blue line. I can't remember the end of the blue line, but now my mind is
Uh,
blank.
like
Uh,
Terimki
yeah,
or
yeah,
Minska.
Caribbean. Yeah, I mean,
Terimki.
and just that road from Academic Stagecoach to Rimkey was, I mean, when I traveled that like the next day after this started, it's like it already had transformed. I mean, in less than 12 hours, you know. Um, so yeah, I just think it's really a shame that, you know, more people, I guess even I'd say like myself, not take it serious. I mean, if more people, I guess in the West had taken that serious, uh, maybe things perhaps would have been different. Um, do you know of any foreigners that are currently that you were with, that you fought with, that were there, and what motivated them to fight?
I have come across with quite a few foreigners fighting on our side. The Americans, the British, the uh, from quite a few countries. Uh, we haven't fought alongside with them, but they because most of the times their troops are a bit more specific. They're special ops, and so we were, as a territorial defense, we were typical infantry. So we would take the ground, dig in, and hold it. That was, like in Irpin, the first time I saw the phosphorus bomb falling over us.
The
That was
what?
a
The what
huge
bomb?
phosphorus
Oh, yeah, yeah. That
during the day.
Yeah,
During
yeah.
the day,
Those to me are some of the scariest things in the world because we were taught in the Marine Corps, like if you get hit by a chunk, if you hold your hand like or your arm like this and it hits here, if you hold your arm the same way, it's gonna burn all the way through. Turn it
eight
over
800
degrees. Yeah.
degrees,
It's
800
it's insane.
degrees. It
Yeah.
burns. bulletproof, anything you have, helmet, anything. So we were lucky that it fell only like 3 to 5 meters away from us, though it exploded right over our trenches. So a lot of things like this when you think, well, thank you, God. Thanks for the guardian angels.
Yeah, it's to survive something like that going off over you is really quite amazing. So, I mean, I know uh, the fear people have of that. That and the thermal barracks would be what I would fear the most, I think. With white phosphorus, you suffer. I guess with thermal barracks, you don't have time to suffer. I mean,
Yeah.
um, I guess, but both of them are very inhumane. And it's the same with cluster bombs. Or were you aware that the Russians were dropping cluster bombs in Chernihiv and other residential regions? This is something that I knew about because I used to travel back and forth to Chernihiv years ago, and I was watching the video of one of these go off, and I it just blew my mind that they were using something such as a cluster bomb in a residential area.
One thing I've experienced when in Kharkiv area when we were defending it and then liberating in summer and fall 2022,
Mhm.
what they love doing, the Russians, they would shoot the cannons with a lot of landmines,
Oh yeah, yeah.
and so into the fields, like anywhere. They would like spread out like thousands of small different types of landmines, like into the fields, into the railroads, into the villages, anywhere. This, I mean, this is like
We
talking about inhumane.
Now
Well, for
I've
me,
heard
for
that
me,
compared. I've heard that
for me, it's
compared.
the same. Russian and inhumane. It's the same thing.
Yeah, because I've heard that someone comparing the amount of landmines that they put on Ukrainian soil far outshadowed what the Viet Cong, the North Vietnamese did in Vietnam. I mean, they made that look like a day camp, from my
Yeah.
understanding. That once this war will end, it will take them decades upon decades to clear these. And and I can remember growing up as a kid, watching on TV, you hearing about villagers in Vietnam, losing their life, losing limbs to a landmine that they happened to cross in Vietnam. And, I'm afraid that that's what we're going to experience with Ukraine as well, until they get this settled. Um,
Unfortunately, yes, unfortunately, that's the reality.
um, I had another question. Now about when you went to Kharkiv. I mean, did you feel like at that time that maybe if we can keep them out of Kharkiv, that would change? Because I really thought that when Kharkiv was pretty much held, that you know that Ukraine would start pushing back, and it seemed like they did push back for some time, and they had some really bad battles like in Bakhmut and stuff like in areas like that that people don't really hear about, because I think on the news they hear. I mean, I don't watch TV here, so I only get my news from little networks, whether it be through YouTube, Instagram, and such. I'm not, you know. I get it from a lot of other people, shall I say, my news. So I get to hear different sides of the news, shall we say. Um, when it comes to, I'm trying to see what here I wanted to touch on. Um, I guess, one of my things right now, I wanted to ask you, like, maybe one more question for right now, and then uh, would probably close this portion, and then I would like to touch base back with you a little later about something else about doing another interview, but different things of what is going on right now. I will call it behind the scenes, but what the future holds, and what can be happening. I would like for you because I'm I'm a veteran with PTSD myself from Panama and also from the Gulf War, and I wanted you to tell people um, what you're doing, what you're involved with trying to help veterans with PTSD.
Okay. Okay. Well, first of all, I want to show this. All right, here. All right. So, okay, hold on. Ah, come on. Oh yeah, here. All right. So, though it may seem that we're sometimes in somewhere we lose, but it's not over when you quit, right?
Yeah,
That's the message. So, what's happening right now? I don't want to touch on politics or anything,
yeah.
okay? But I do understand one thing that it's the third world war for us right now, okay?
Well, I think it's
Every
going to be
day,
for the whole world if we don't stop it in Ukraine.
every day the Russians are attacking different cities with their drones, combat drones, with their Shaheds. And like last night, they attacked Dnipro again. And then the other night it was Odessa, and then Kyiv, and then Sumy. Every day they attack uh, peaceful cities. They are not going to stop. They feel the blood now, they tasted it, and they're like, yeah, they don't count the losses. It doesn't there is no need to say how many hundreds and thousands of dead of their own soldiers because they don't care.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that because I remember like I think after about the first month that, or maybe it was before that, that the Russian military started having their soldiers remove their name tapes, their anything identifying them, and like even documents like passports, because the Ukrainians knew. I think the Ukrainian soldiers knew that the Russians didn't believe what was going on and that they were posting photos of the documents alongside the soldier. And a lot of, I think some people here maybe would have thought that was morbid, but it's really a way of saying, hey, look, we're just letting you know that your family member is deceased now. Uh, and so I had heard rumors that they had stopped with all the documents on soldiers. They had no name tapes. They had no identification. What do you know about that? That is true, correct?
At first, they were hiding those things, especially, the invasion started back in 2014. Again, a lot of people don't know it or don't want to believe it. The actual war is right now raging for 11 years.
Yeah,
And so at that time, they were hiding their presence, but they were here. The regular troops or special operations troops from the Russian army or intelligence were operating here. So they were hiding. Then in the first months of this full-scale invasion, they were kind of trying to hide. Now they don't care. Now they just don't care because they believe that the population of the Russian Federation is so into the support of Putin because they're so brainwashed and they don't like the Ukrainians. They believe all kinds of different false flags or all kinds of different propaganda messages that now they don't care. They just say, "Oh, they're heroes of Russia." But what heroes of Russia? We defend Russia. It's like what on a different on the on a territory of another country, and it's like invading and shelling and killing the civilians and taking the territory, the ground. Is that the kind of protection? The thing is that Moscow, in its current state, they are not going to let go of Ukraine. That's it. They can say anything they want about peace deals or whatever. They're not trusted. They're not to be trusted. That I mean, for several hundreds of times that there were different peace negotiations, different agreements that they kept violating because this is not in their interest. They're not going to stop. That's it. They just don't want to stop. That's it.
How do you see this ending?
The West
The
uh,
West getting involved.
gets together with us, remembering the Budapest Memorandum, the word and the understanding that we are on the forefront of the democracy protection. We are fighting for it. We are fighting for the freedom. We are fighting for the European values. And so the West and the best way, and we're not asking for people, we're not asking for troops on the land, on the ground. We just need the weaponry. We just need the provision, the ammo. We just need the intel. We just need all the technology support. Uh, that's it. The vehicles, the air defense systems, because the civilians are struggling from the terroristic attacks every night, every day. And
Now,
so the only way that the sanctions should press the Russian Federation so much, just as it was in 1989, 1988, when the Russians, when Moscow said, "Oh no, we no longer are able to keep the union together because we economically are so devastated." So that's the only way. That's the only way. The thugs mentality of Moscow and the Kremlin can understand and respect only the force, the strength. That's it. No negotiations. Every attempt for peace negotiations with them, they take as weakness. That's it.
you know, I wanted to retouch back to some things that happened in Irpin, and then I want to get to that question about what you're doing now to help veterans.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
um,
Sorry.
no,
I
no, I
got
mean,
distracted a
I
little.
mean, I sometimes I will even start talking about something, then and then somebody will ask me a question, then I will forget what I was talking about. It's I don't know,
Veterans
it's
are
times
like
getting old.
veterans, yeah.
Um, you know, because I guess due to the last question, about PTSD and trauma to people, I remember this horrific story of three Russian soldiers in Irpin, or is it Irpin or Bucha? I can't remember, but I mean it's the same region. But they had went into this one apartment and had taken over and had forcibly raped this woman in front of her son for like 2 or 3 days until she
Yeah.
basically died.
It's
And
Bucha, yeah.
the trauma that this kid went through just in those days forced him into growing old. I mean, he was only like, I think, 8 or 9 years old. I can't remember what I had heard, but he had already, in just those days from the stress he endured, had already turned gray hair. I mean, like most of his hair on his head was gray from what I had heard about. Um, and things like that. I mean, I know like I would like to have you on another time, and we would discuss like specific areas and what you know about these areas. Maybe like Mariupol, Bucha, in more detail, and also and possibly Bakhmut. Maybe we could even have like maybe if I can arrange this to have maybe like 4 or 5 guys on at one time, giving, bouncing off their thoughts, and sometimes I think it would be more interesting for viewers. But I guess really the last thing I would like to touch on today would be really what you're doing to help veterans with PTSD, because I think this is maybe what you're doing there would help veterans, all over the world. Because I know, like, in this country, in America, we have 22 veterans a day that are dying by self-harm. And I only see this, getting to Ukraine unless we have people like yourself that are maybe you've come up with a unique way that's going to help people that will keep them away from that, or at least, I mean, because if you can just save one person a day or one
Yeah.
person a month, I mean, that's a lot,
Yeah.
So, uh,
Well, that's a huge issue because we already have hundreds of thousands veterans that have been discharged due to different health issues or different legal situations of their family state or whatever. And so they are now released from the army and they are veterans. The combatants, those that have had a difficult, traumatic, psychological, and emotional experience. So at this point, my approach, due to my former experience with the improvisation, I have created an improv 450. 450 is a radio code that everything's okay. So 450 is like a positive thing. So improv 450 for the veterans, which I do as an improv studio, where it's not about acting, it's not about becoming a stage presenter or whatever, but it's about the community and fun. And so one of the major things for the PTSD or for the prevention of the development of PTSD is a solid community environment where a person is able to talk through different issues and being open and trusting and that he's not alone. That's the main thing. Another thing is another thing which comes out of this improv studio, which where I use applied improvisational methods. So it's about psychology, but it's applied psychology. It's about improvisation, but not as a hard skill, not as a occupation, but just as a way of expressing yourself, getting in touch with yourself again through emotions, through communications, through interaction. That's a very deep thing, which is happening mostly on the neural connection level, and it takes time. So one of the what comes out of here is the project that I call Hobby Way. I believe one of the ways for the veterans, first of all, to create a desire to go to specialists, right? Because everyone needs, some kind of a therapy, especially after this. But not many feel like going because of we're way still in the Middle Ages in our main mindset towards psychotherapy and all those things, because the Soviet mentality that was enforced on us says that if you go to a psychologist, then you're mental, you're psycho,
or
you're
weak,
sick,
or yeah, yeah.
and you are weak. And so now it's still is very in the minds of soldiers, because we're talking about soldiers of 30, 40, 50 plus years of age, and so of course they have their own mindsets. And so to develop their understanding that they need help is through hobby. If you create an environment where a veteran is easily interested in by default, because if it's his hobby, he takes down the barriers. He just opens the gates. He's open to this, And if it is a controlled setting with the specialist facilitating it, then little by little he will open up because this is uh, this is the way it works. We open up if we talk like with you. If we talk about weapons, then you open up. Hey, yeah, I know a thing or two about weapons. I can give you a suggestion about picking up an AR system or whatever. But
I'm accused
that's
of talking about that stuff too much
yeah, yeah.
by
But
many
but
people in my family. Uh,
but that's what I'm.
I
When
mean, I would think yeah, if you can talk to someone.
fishing, sport, volleyball,
Oh yeah, I mean,
football,
any hobby,
any hobby, but not the hobby for the sake of hobby, but the hobby as an instrument of opening up the hearts. And so, and in a good, comfortable, accepting environment, everyone will open up. And then they will see that it's not difficult, it's not scary to talk to an expert because the experts don't bite, you know. So that's my approach. I do my own thing. I do a lot of presentations, speaking at different activities, different veterans hubs, uh, and uh, and little by little I promote this idea of hobby way with other different structures, different people involved. So it takes time. So, but that's what I do after I retired on this past December.
so I mean, do you see that when this war is over, that I would think your work has just begun. Uh,
Yeah,
I think helping in the different battles is a very courageous thing, but I think what's in your future is going to take much more of your time, much more of your heart, soul, mind. It will take so much more, but if you stick with it, I believe that you can help and touch a lot of people. And I think this is where, because I would hate to see, in your future, you wearing something like this for, in the name of, veterans. I don't know if you can see that. I, I don't never hardly ever take it off, but
yeah, yeah.
I hope that your country doesn't come to that, um, because the thing I think that happens with veterans is when it's over, if they don't get help or they don't get into a program like what you're developing, that they become lost, and then they feel they have no other option. But you know, they don't want to be a statistic, so or they don't want to be a part of, I guess, conventional help, I guess you could say, and then they just lose contact, and then
Yeah.
you know then they do actually become a statistic. And
Well, in this case, all kinds of unconventional, like stepping stones, can help to introduce a veteran to the more professional help.
but anyway, I would like to close this now, and I truly appreciate your time, and would I definitely want to have you back again once I get things up and going a little bit better, and talk more in detail, and maybe probably could talk about this all day long, but it might have to be something like a 2 or 3 episode deal. So I would like to thank you for your time, and if you would just stay on after I stop the video, and we'll discuss what's coming for the future.
Sounds good. Thanks for inviting. Thank you, everyone, for the support and for believing in the democratic and free nations, which
I,
is
I just hope that there will
thank you.
be more more in the future. It's so hard to talk about this without being political. It really is. So I appreciate your time.